Let's get one thing clear. You don't owe anyone your presence. Not your ex, not your toxic friend, not your flaky maybe partner. You are not a Wi-Fi connection. You don't have to be available to everyone all the time. So, here's your permission slip. Ghost them. All of them. And walk into the most powerful era of your life. Silently. No explanations. No goodbyes. No closure. Because guess what? Silence is the closure. And when they realize you've disappeared from their chaos, they'll finally feel what your presence meant. Not everyone deserves access to you. Just because someone calls you bestie, bae, or even family, doesn't mean they automatically qualify for a seat at your table. You are not a public park. You are a private island. And entry to that island should come with requirements. Respect, effort, energy, and intention. Let's take it to the real world. Think about your phone. Would you let someone scroll through your personal gallery without asking? No. So why are you letting people scroll through your energy, your time, your heart, without permission, without purpose? Your presence is power. Your time is luxury. Your energy is elite currency. Stop handing it out like it's on clearance. You see, when you start treating yourself like you're valuable, people will either rise to meet your standard or disappear. And both are a blessing. Now think about this. You're texting someone every day, checking up on them, making sure they're okay. But when you're going through hell, they go silent. No call, no concern. They'll still watch your story though, won't they? That's not connection. That's an convenience. And the sooner you identify it, the freer you become. Ever been in a room full of people and still felt alone? That's what happens when your soul is surrounded by bodies but not by energy. It's not about who's around you, it's about who sees you, who feels you, who genuinely values you. Let me tell you a truth people don't like to hear. Some people only love the version of you they can benefit from. The moment you stop dancing for their comfort or bleeding for their peace, they call you selfish. But what they're really saying is, I can't control you anymore. And that's your cue to walk away. In daily life, it's the friend who always needs a favor but vanishes when you need support. It's the relative who only calls when they need money but never once asks, how are you really doing? It's the partner who wants your loyalty, your body, your care, but refuses to give you respect or consistency in return. These people don't want you, they want access to you. Big difference. You know why some people treat you like an option? Because you keep showing them you'll always be available. You keep answering texts at 2 a.m. even when you're drained. You keep saying yes even when your soul is screaming no. That's not kindness. That's emotional self-sabotage in disguise. Listen carefully. Being available to everyone makes you invisible to yourself. You don't need to reply to that message. You don't need to explain why you're distant. You don't need to defend your boundaries. You are allowed to disappear from places where you are only remembered when you're needed. You are allowed to guard your peace. Because your peace, your focus, your energy, these are sacred. And sacred things aren't for everyone. We live in a world where everyone's talking, screaming for attention, explaining their worth, defending their choices. But here's the truth most people overlook. Silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not defeat. Silence is strategy. Silence is power. Silence is a statement louder than any shout could ever be. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone disrespects you. They call you names, spread lies, throw their immaturity like weapons. The old you might rush to respond, fire back, prove them wrong, show them who you are. But what if you didn't? What if you simply looked them in the eye, smiled, and walked away? No words, no reaction, just grace. That silence, that unbothered energy, it'll echo in their head longer than any argument ever could. Because silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to know they're not even worth the breath. Think about your daily life. You text someone, no reply. You double text, still silence. Then days later, they pop up with a hey. And instead of matching that silence, you rush to respond as if their absence didn't speak volume. Stop doing that. Silence is not something to fear, it's something to master. Because when you finally let your absence do the talking, people start listening differently. You don't need to explain why you stopped talking to that friend who only called you when they were lonely. You don't need to justify why you fell back from that partner who made you feel like a backup plan. You don't know anyone, your reasons, when your silence is grace. That silence, that unbothered energy, it'll echo in their head longer than any argument ever could. Because silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to know they're not even worth the breath. Think about your daily life. You text someone, no reply. You double text, still silence. Then days later, they pop up with a hey. And instead of matching that silence, you rush to respond as if their absence didn't speak volume. Stop doing that. Silence is not something to fear, it's something to master. Because when you finally let your absence do the talking, people start listening differently. You don't need to explain why you stopped talking to that friend who only called you when they were lonely. You don't need to justify why you fell back from that partner who made you feel like a backup plan. You don't know anyone, your reasons, when your silence is already your answer. You see, reacting gives them control. Responding emotionally puts the power in their hands. But staying silent, that keeps them guessing. Confused, curious. Haunted by what you could have said but chose not to. And that's what eats them alive. The mystery of your peace. Have you ever been in a heated argument and suddenly the other person goes quiet and your mind starts racing? What are they thinking? Why aren't they answering back? That silence makes you uncomfortable. It unsettles you. Why? Because the unknown is always more powerful than the obvious. That's the psychological weapon of silence. It shifts the power dynamic without lifting a finger. Let's go deeper. You're walking away from a toxic relationship and they want closure, not because they care, but because they want control over how the story ends. Don't give it to them. Sometimes the most powerful closure is no closure at all. Because silence tells them, I've healed in places you'll never have access to again. In your career too. Someone doubts you, mocks your ambition, questions your vision. Don't argue. Don't over-explain your dreams to people too small to see them. Let your silence work while your success speaks. There's no revenge louder than results delivered in silence. Your peace is a battlefield. And every time you choose silence over chaos, you win. Not because you couldn't fight, but because you didn't have to. That's the difference between people who are reactive and people who are evolved. The next time someone tries to pull you into drama, into nonsense, into cycles you've already outgrown, remember this: you don't need to light every fire just because someone hands you a match. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. Just watch. Let the silence thicken. Let them wonder. There is a version of you that doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't beg to be understood. That version, that's the dangerous one. That's the healed one. That's the one who's realized that silence isn't the absence of a response. It is the response. Sometimes the version of you that doesn't chase isn't the absence of a response. It is the response. And when used right, it's louder than anything they ever expected from you. Your peace is more important than their opinions. You weren't born to be understood by everyone. You weren't placed on this earth to be liked, approved, or clapped for by every voice in the room. And yet, every day, people walk around with anxiety in their chest, knots in their stomach, afraid of what someone might say about their choices, their looks, their voice, their dreams. But let me remind you, you don't owe your peace to anyone's opinion. You owe it to yourself. Think of it like this. If a stranger walks up to you and says, "You're not beautiful," does that suddenly make you less beautiful? No. So why is it that when someone close to you doubts your worth, you absorb it like gospel? Their opinion is not your truth. Their limitation is not your boundary. And your peace should never be a sacrifice to their noise. You're out here trying to grow, to heal, to evolve, and someone says, "You've changed." Good. That's the point. You're supposed to change. You're not a wallpaper. You're a wildfire. And people who are stuck in the same cycles will always resent those who outgrow the loop. That's not your burden to carry. Protect your peace, even if it looks like distance, even if it looks like silence, even if it looks like selfishness to those who benefit from your self-neglect. Picture this. You want to leave a job that drains you, but your family says it's safe, it pays well, don't risk it. But they don't wake up in your skin. They don't hear your thoughts at 2 a.m. They don't feel the weight you carry every day just to smile through the exhaustion. Their opinion may be loud, but your peace is louder if you listen closely. Sometimes walking away from something secure is the most secure thing you'll ever do for your soul. Or maybe you're in a relationship where you're constantly being told you're too emotional, too ambitious, too much. And suddenly you start shrinking, toning down your laughter, second-guessing your dreams, editing yourself in real time just to keep the peace. But if keeping the peace requires losing your own, then it was never peace to begin with. It was control dressed in politeness. And you don't have to wear it anymore. There's power in saying, "I don't agree," and that's okay. There's strength in setting a boundary and letting the other person fumble in discomfort while you stay calm in your truth. Not every battle deserves a sword. Some just require silence, distance, and self-respect. Your peace is not a compromise. It's your compass. Follow it, even when the road gets lonely. Social media is another battlefield. You post a picture, someone comments something negative, suddenly your mood shifts. You question your beauty, your confidence, your worth, all because of a stranger's opinion, filtered through insecurity. No. Your value does not dim under someone else's shade. Let them talk, let them judge, let them misunderstand. That's their lens, not your reality. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are not a courtroom argument needing to be proven. You are peace in motion. And peace doesn't explain itself, it simply exists. Fully, authentically, unapologetically. In life, you'll find that opinions are handed out like flyers on a street corner. Loud, pushy, and often ignored. But your peace, that's earned, that's cultivated, that's sacred. So, when it's you versus the world's expectations, choose you. Every single time. Because when the lights go off and the world gets quiet, the only voice that truly matters is the one inside your own mind. And that voice deserves calm, clarity, and confidence, not chaos born from other people's noise. It begins subtly. You say no to someone, and suddenly you feel like a villain. You choose yourself one time, and they make you feel like you've betrayed the world. But here's the truth no one tells you loud enough. Guilt is often not a sign that you did something wrong. It's a signal that you've finally done something right for yourself. And people who've benefited from your self-abandonment will always call your boundaries betrayal. Let's get one thing straight. Guilt is not always a moral compass. Sometimes it's a prison, constructed by manipulation, tradition, and unspoken expectations. You cancel plans to take care of your mental health and feel guilty. You don't lend money to someone who never pays back and feel guilty. You walk away from a relationship that drained you for years, and still the guilt creeps in like a thief in the night, trying to rob you of your peace. But ask yourself this: who put that guilt there? Was it your heart or their narrative? Think about a daughter who chooses a career abroad instead of staying in the same town to keep her family comfortable. They say, "You left us behind," but they never say, "You grew wings and flew." The guilt she carries is not hers, it's theirs. It's the weight of someone else's inability to let go. And she deserves to drop it, because choosing your future over someone's comfort isn't betrayal. Or imagine a friend who always leaned on you, called you at 2 a.m., made you their emotional crutch. You were there, always, until you weren't. You started setting limits, protecting your space, learning to say, "I can't be everything to you." And just like that, they flipped the story. You've changed. You're cold now. You're selfish. No, that's not selfish. That's self-respect. But guilt will knock at your door like an old ghost, whispering, "Remember who you used to be." And if you're not careful, you'll open the door and let it in. You'll forget that growth requires letting go of roles you've outgrown. The trap of guilt works like quicksand. The more you fight it with logic, the deeper it pulls you in emotionally. So don't fight it. Drop it. Not with justification, not with permission, but with power. Because you don't need to carry what doesn't belong to you anymore. Let's talk relationships. You leave someone who cheated, disrespected, lied, and still you feel bad for leaving. Why? Because they say things like, "I need you," or "You gave up on us." But did they fight for you when it mattered? Or is guilt just their last weapon to keep you tethered? Hear this. Emotional manipulation often wears the mask of guilt. And if you don't recognize it, you'll confuse being a good person with being a doormat. Even in parenting, you'll see it. A mother goes back to work and the world says she's not present. A father chooses his mental health over burning out and people whisper, "He's distant." And suddenly, the guilt sets in. But your children don't need a perfect parent. They need a healthy one. one who shows up with a full cup, not one drowning in silent resentment. Guilt makes you second-guess decisions that your soul already knows are right. It's the echo of people who couldn't handle your transformation. It's the consequence of choosing light in a world addicted to shadows. And yes, people will try to throw your past in your face, remind you of mistakes, twist your choices into offenses. But they don't know the storms you've survived, the boundaries you had to build, the courage it took to say enough. So today, if you're feeling that heavy, sticky feeling in your chest, pause. Ask yourself, is this guilt truth? Or is it conditioning? Is this your conscience talking or your fear of disappointing others? And if it's the latter, drop it. Not with guilt, but with grace. Because you weren't born to carry the weight of other people's expectations on your back while your soul gasps for air. You were born to breathe. You were born to choose. You were born to be free. Energy doesn't lie. Follow that feeling. You ever walked into a room and instantly felt the tension before a single word was spoken? That's not paranoia. That's energy speaking to you. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable. People can say all the right words, wear the perfect smile, and still something deep in your gut whispers, something's off. That feeling isn't random. It's wisdom. It's intuition. It's the ancient part of you that doesn't care about politeness or logic. It just knows. And when you ignore it, that's when you pay the price. We're taught to prioritize appearances, not alignment. We're told to give people the benefit of the doubt, to listen to their words instead of trusting our vibe. But how many times have you felt uneasy around someone who claimed to love you? How many times? Did you feel drained after hanging out with a friend who pretended to support you? Energy doesn't play dress up. It either feels right or it doesn't. And your body knows the truth long before your brain catches up. Take the example of dating. You're seeing someone. They text the right things, compliment you, make promises, but something inside you tugs, a restlessness. You notice how you shrink in their presence, how your light dims, even though their words sound sweet. That's your energy speaking. It's saying, this isn't safety. This is survival masked as love. And if you're brave enough to listen, you'll walk away before the heartbreak, not after. Or at work, ever notice how some meetings leave you inspired and others leave you drained, like you've just run a marathon in silence? It's not just the workload. It's energy. Some people spark creativity. Others suck the life out of a room with their passive aggression and silent competition. But society tells you to ignore the vibe. Be professional. No, be protective. You have the right to honor your energy, even in spaces that reward burnout over balance. Friendships too. That one friend who constantly jokes about your insecurities, calls it just teasing, but every time you leave their company, you feel smaller. Your energy is bruised, yet you stay out of loyalty, out of history, out of guilt. But if history is hurting you and loyalty is draining you, that's not a friendship. That's a soul tax. You deserve relationships where your spirit feels safe, not tolerated. Let's talk about dreams. Sometimes energy speaks through passion. You light up when you talk about starting your own business, traveling the world, launching that podcast. But everyone around you says, be realistic. And suddenly that fire dims under the weight of their doubt. But hear this, Energy doesn't lie. If something excites you and terrifies you, it's probably the door you need to walk through. And if something feels like death in slow motion, no amount of money or comfort should keep you there. Even in daily life. Have you ever had a sudden urge to take a different route home? Or cancel plans last minute, only to realize later something didn't feel right for a reason? That's energy. That's your internal GPS trying to steer you from danger, from chaos, from misalignment. The question is, will you trust it? We've become so addicted to validation that we don't even trust our own instincts anymore. We wait for someone else to say, "You were right," before we give ourselves permission to believe our gut. But your intuition doesn't need a round of applause. It just needs you to listen. Energy is language. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just a whisper, a feeling in your chest, a subtle shift in your mood. But if you ignore it long enough, it becomes anxiety, fatigue, even illness. Your body keeps the score of the energy you've tolerated for too long. So the next time someone feels off, believe that. The next time a room feels heavy, honor that. The next time you light up around certain people, lean into that. Because energy never lies. It's the truth before the words, the clarity before the chaos, the compass that knows where you belong, long before your mind does. Follow that feeling. It will never mislead you. The new you doesn't owe the old you anything. You don't have to explain why you no longer hang out with the same people, do the same things, chase the same validation, or even talk like you used to. That version of you, the one that tolerated the bare minimum, that laughed to fit in, that said yes to stay liked, served a purpose. It helped you survive. But survival isn't the same as living. And once you've tasted the power of growth, you don't owe guilt to the version of yourself that didn't know any better. We all start somewhere. Maybe you were the people pleaser, the one who kept peace at your own expense. You let people cross lines, make jokes at your cost, use your kindness and for years, that version of you wore a smile and called it strength. But the new you, you're different now. You're not here to play small anymore. You're not here to apologize for having boundaries. And most of all, you're not here to drag your past like dead weight just because it once felt like home. Think about it. You wouldn't ask a butterfly to shrink back into the cocoon just because it's more familiar. You wouldn't ask a healed wound to bleed again just to honor the pain. So, why do we feel like we owe loyalty to outdated versions of ourselves? Imagine a woman who used to stay silent when a partner insulted her in public. She told herself it was love. She told herself he would change. She told herself she was strong for staying. But the new version of her, she speaks. She walks away. She doesn't wait for love to be less cruel. And does that mean she hates her past self? No. It means she grew. And she doesn't owe that former silence anything but gratitude for teaching her to rise. Or a man who spent years in a job that crushed his creativity just to pay the bills. He clocked in, clocked out, day after day, pretending not to hear the voice that screamed, "You're meant for more." Then one day he walks away, starts that business, writes that book, travels the world. And sure, people say, "But you used to be so stable, so grounded." No, he was trapped. And the new him doesn't owe the old routine his return. Just because others are uncomfortable with his freedom Growth isn't betrayal, it's evolution. And evolution means shedding. Shedding beliefs, people, habits, even dreams that don't match your expansion. It means waking up and realizing that just because something felt right once doesn't mean it belongs in your forever. You're allowed to outgrow versions of yourself that were built on fear. You're allowed to rewrite your story without footnotes that explain every chapter before this one. You're allowed to say, I used to be her, but I'm not anymore. And you don't need anyone's permission to do that. Your past self did the best they could with the knowledge, tools, and self-worth they had at the time. But you have more now. You see clearer. You feel deeper. You dream bigger. And the old you, they're not your jailer. They're just your roots. You're the tree. You're the Vikchi. You're the Viki. Growth. You're the sky now. You don't need to carry every mistake like a souvenir. You don't need to keep watering old habits out of loyalty. And you definitely don't need to answer every time your past tries to call you back. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is saying, thank you for getting me here, but I don't need you anymore. Because the truth is, the new you was built in fire, in tears, in moments that felt like endings, but were really beginning. You clawed your way through things that would have broken the old you. And you deserve to move forward, not out of revenge, not out of rebellion, but out of rebirth. You've walked through fire, you've danced with doubt, you've sat in silence while the world screamed at you to be smaller, softer, quieter, and yet here you are, unbroken, unbothered, becoming. There is a version of you right now that your old self wouldn't even recognize. And that's the point. You didn't come this far to remain the same. You came to rise, to remember, to reclaim every piece of yourself that you once handed over for the sake of being liked, being loved, being accepted. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand your silence, your boundaries, your glow up. Let them wonder why you don't respond the same way, why your eyes look different now, why your presence feels heavier, more powerful. Because here's the truth. When you stop chasing people and start chasing peace, the whole frequency of your life changes. And not everyone will be able to rise with you. That's not your burden. That's your breakthrough. There comes a time when you stop knocking on doors that slam in your face. You stop bleeding for people who wouldn't hand you a bandage. You stop proving your worth to those who are committed to misunderstanding your value. That time is now. You're not here to convince. You're here to create, to build, to love yourself so loud that it drowns out the noise of everyone who said you wouldn't make it. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. Don't dull your shine to keep the peace. Don't go back to what broke you just because it's familiar. You're not obligated to carry dead weight. You're not required to explain your healing. You're not anyone's second chance. The moment you chose yourself, you already won. Don't be afraid of losing people, they say. Be afraid of losing yourself while trying to keep them. Because if keeping them means abandoning you, then what exactly are you holding on to? Real ones don't fear your growth, they cheer for it. They rise with you or respectfully step aside. And the ones who shame your glow up, they were only comfortable with your wounds. The most powerful move you'll ever make is going silent on what no longer serves your soul. Not because you're petty, not because you're cold, but because your peace became expensive and not everyone deserves a discount. Say it with your energy. I'm not coming back. I'm not shrinking down. I'm not explaining why I love myself now. Remember this, you either evolve or you repeat. And every time you choose to ignore your intuition, to stay in comfort, to tolerate less than you deserve, you're repeating. But when you say, enough, when you say, I am not for sale, I am not for show, I am sacred, that's when everything begins to align. Not perfectly, not instantly, but powerfully. Don't wait for them to clap. Clap for yourself. Don't wait for closure. Sometimes silence is the closure. Don't wait for a perfect time to become who you were always meant to be. The time is now. Not next week, not next year. Now. The version of you that has boundaries, that walks away without a scene, that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't perform. She is already inside you. She's been waiting, watching, whispering, let me lead. So walk like you own the ground beneath you. Speak like your words birth worlds. Move like your future depends on it, because it does. And every time you choose your peace over their approval, your purpose over their opinions, your growth over your guilt, you win. Because queens don't explain, they elevate. Legends don't beg, they become. And the new you, she's not just a phase, she's the standard. Let them miss the old you. She was sweet, she was soft, but this one, she's unshakable. She's divine. She's unapologetically free.